We were initially on the Donetsk front and then received orders at night to move towards the Kursk direction. After that we set out. We walked about 15 kilometers and then accordingly boarded, loaded up. We moved our entire unit on the march without any rest, without sleep. And right away, when we arrived in the settlement already in the Kursk region, we immediately began addressing the tasks. The task was to organize an ambush. Also to monitor the sky regarding the movement of enemy equipment, to prevent the advancement of enemy equipment, to identify it and accordingly destroy it. We were assigned boundaries, set up ambushes and established observation posts. The work of the UAV team was continuous both day and night. As the enemy advanced along our designated boundary, Kursk, one armored vehicle, the AFU Kazakh, and also a striker was hit, but the striker caught fire and continued to advance. Subsequently, this column was completely finished off directly by our brigade's units.
Here, in fact, is one of the Humvees of the Ukrainian forces, which was dismantled here in the full direction by the Guards Marines of the 8th Infantry Brigade. They simply had no chance. They tried to bypass the settlement, to encircle it operationally, but were met with skillful actions by the Marine fighters, everything that was left themselves. Did I wait for him?
They jumped out through mines and met them with heavy fire, during which the camera was blown up and the infantry group was destroyed. There it lies in the future. In addition, we set up a minefield near the enemy's equipment to prevent it from being evacuated by the enemy. And also, there was no opportunity to advance in this area, and also covered with mines. Tank mines, all roads, all movement hubs. After which we set up and organized NP and ambushes. Basically, that's all. People are on duty continuously, constantly in communication. Ambushes are organized as well as observation posts and also cover for equipment. Equipment cover for ambushes. These ones. And also blocking roads so that the enemy cannot advance along them. That is, each road is covered by our armored vehicles. ATGM units are deployed in the folded sections of the road in order to control enemy movement and destroy armored vehicles, both lightly and heavily armored. Well, it should be correct.
One by one, guys, one by one, slowly and carefully cross the road. Be careful.
They tried to cut us off, the central road. They tried to cut it off. Here we will walk through and you will see what happened to them. We blocked this road, took out their equipment. The infantry scattered in the cornfields and the plantations. Later on, groups were assigned and they conducted a reconnaissance patrol. Everything was secured, the enemy was destroyed. Here, naturally, along the road, there were ambushes everywhere. Prepared ones. And here, actually, the destroyed column of Ukrainian troops in the area of the settlement. They were also met here. The brave Marine fighters of the 8th Pen Marine Brigade, which makes the enemy, to put it mildly, feel uneasy. Brother, tell us how it all happened.
Accordingly, the settlement was located in the village of the enemy column up to 15-11 meters. Accordingly, 4 units of equipment were destroyed at the front line, including 2 veteran units. On the move to surrender, fear about childhood was given, and we had reserves of the Storm Detachment and DSHB, which met the column. You had 3 to 4 damaged vehicles, which were destroyed by RPG-7 and disposable tubes. Accordingly, cameras. 1 overturned, self in the rear, fell to the side. 4 vehicles have already driven out here. Our BTA-2A drove out. You can see the shells on the road. Accordingly, from here it worked on these 3 vehicles. They are destroyed. 1 vehicle went up the hill, mainly damaged the engine, and 4 vehicles went further back to the rear. Consequently, the settlement, which was further on, was extended. 2 strikers, 1 Cougar.
The enemy always tries to flank us either from the right or the left because they feel the frontal fire impact and decide to go around. But without much thought, they placed 3 men there, 2 men there as fire ambushes, just at the turns, to cover themselves just in case. And the result was that they, as they say, walked right into the trap. They came in themselves. They started moving very confidently. We let them into our area, so to speak, into the settlement, and just began to destroy them from the flanks. One-time horses by SSG, RTG, and plus 2 BTRs, our Valiant 82s. They just pierced them through with a 30mm cannon. They just started piercing through.
What was the distance to the enemy?
The distance to the enemy, we let them come right up to us, under 5,200 meters. Very close, because the closer the enemy is to us, the greater the likelihood that they won't direct artillery, because it would start hitting their own. They won't do that. That's why they are very weak in close combat. They get confused when they are under fire. From 2 flanks, they don't know where to shoot, where to run, and they can't direct artillery. And when it comes to themselves, of course, they don't have the guts to withstand the fire. That's all. And in fact, it turned out that they just couldn't handle it. As they say, the impact from just 2 squads, that's 13 people, the fire impact, they couldn't withstand ours.
And how many were there?
Our company came in here. First, they brought in 7 units. After those 7 units, they decided to attack from the left flank. We had 4 more units to reach. But they didn't succeed. I was both a driver, a machine gunner, a scout, and a motorist. I went through all the positions: squad leader, deputy platoon commander, platoon commander. I've been here from the very first day, from the very beginning, the landing in Berdyansk, Mariupol, from the very start, in all directions. The enemy behaves differently. Why? Because it seems to me they have set up a large testing ground here, and those people in Washington or wherever they are, they decided to try things on us with someone else's hands. They analyze some kind of impact and try to outplay us, but they still can't succeed because our people have such a spirit that you can't predict what to expect from them. You look into a fighter's eyes and you can't understand what to expect from them. That's why they will never understand us, and they won't succeed no matter how hard they try. Because they act differently in different directions. In some places, they often just use artillery to wipe everything off the face of the earth. In other places, they start with what they have, like a very good ally, Magyar, destroying everything with drones. But we have also found a way to counter him. We also destroy those drones of his. And in some places like here, they try to infiltrate with small sabotage and reconnaissance groups. But they don't understand that before sending a sabotage group, even if it's just 15 people into the forest to us, they need to establish some kind of logistics chain. That means food, water, communication means. This also shows, as they say, the extent to which they lack the strength and resources for this. And they just throw them in. And the people here, as many as we found in the forest, let's call them forest brothers, well, they just hope to surrender.
What can you say about your guys? Who are these people? How do they perform in battle?
What guys?
Yours.
I can say even more. They felt that rush of adrenaline against the opponents now. And they understand that this opponent is, well, nothing to us. And they are, you could say, still playing with them. As they say, spies and snacks. They go through clearing the areas I have indicated. They find one opponent, a fighter somewhere too. And they are already, as they say, more confident. All my fighters are only moving forward. They understand that here the enemy is simply weak. We can't handle us morally, can't handle us physically. The enemy constantly demands artillery support, which they have little of, the same goal. Infantry support, they also lack that. And therefore, as they say, all my fighters just keep pushing them forward, they go. They calmly arrive at them in armored personnel carriers. They rush into their forest positions on motorcycles and, as they say, without fear. In other words, they have felt that rhythm, they have taken that pace.
Yes, of course, the enemy encountered our brigade and can no longer behave as arrogantly as they did when we first arrived from the march. They felt like they owned the place here. After directly confronting our brigade, they realized they can't control everything like that anymore. And they no longer feel like they own the place, because the brigade stopped their main advancement principles, how they were moving. And now we are not letting them advance further. In other words, the brigade has roughly held back this main surge, and now we are trying not to let them break through. And from here on, we will only move forward. The enemy, I think, probably doesn't quite understand where they are going or moving, because according to observations, for example, from the same UAV, drone type, it has been noticed several times how columns of equipment were just moving in circles, back and forth, back and forth. This is most likely because they themselves do not understand where they need to go. They are not aware of where they are and where they should ultimately end up.
Well, they ran into us. And now they realize that, as they say, there is no further path for them. That's it. They have stalled. We have simply stopped them at this line and are driving them back home.
The enemy continues to exert pressure on certain sections of the front in the Kursk direction. But here's what's interesting to note, where the enemy encounters confident guys who understand that this enemy can be beaten, that they can be driven into retreat, as is done, for example, by the 8th 10th Marine Brigade, with whom I work today. There is essentially no pressure. The enemy, when faced with such resistance, falls back, brings up tanks, brings up artillery, whatever they have, like mortars. So far they haven't brought in heavy artillery here, and they just start dismantling the nearby area. We were just sitting in the forest and the enemy was simply shelling houses, peaceful residential homes with tanks. In other words, there is no continuous advancement. Where it's weak, the enemy breaks through, secures the area, and brings up reserves. Where they can't do that, they start dismantling settlements and dig into defense if they feel that the pressure is reversing and there is such movement here. Yes, they have such a counteroffensive when the same Martiki pushed the enemy back, preventing them from taking new positions. Overall, the situation is, of course, difficult. A difficult situation in the Kursk district. But if we talk about the Belovskoye direction,